Welcome back to Sharpen the Point. We wrap up our look at the Big Ten, breaking down what each team is losing, returning, and bringing in for next season. Today, we get to look at two former Pac 12 title contenders in USC and Washington that have made largely successful transitions into the Big Ten, and a Wisconsin team that what should have been correctly predicted, Luke Fickell would be fired before Thanksgiving because they absolutely sucked for most of last season due to mainly a difficult schedule, but they actually were just a terrible team. But they ultimately decided not to pay the buyout. And instead of going to get a very good coach in Jason Eck, we are left with the Luke Fickell experience once again. Starting out with USC Trojans, one of my favorite quarterbacks in the country, a guy I was high on coming into last year. Welcome to the bandwagon, everybody else. Jaden Maeva returns for one final season. It might have cost him the future, though. Houston Longstreet, I thought, looked great in limited opportunities for this offense. And his transfer to LSU is a big deal as far as the long-term aspirations and growth trajectory of this quarterback position. Although for another season, Maeva will be a better option, and it's probably a short-term good answer for Lincoln Riley to keep Maeva in the mix here. Running back wise, they are absolutely stacked after having question marks coming into last year. Wayman Jordan is one hell of a playmaker. He was battling an ankle injury for much of the season, which cost him a large portion of time, but that allowed the emergence of King Miller, who is an absolute stud now as well. Pairing those two together is an amazing 1-2 punch combination. So much so that a talented back in Brian Jackson goes out the door. They're loaded at the top. I think that's one of the better tandems in the country to bring back, with Wayman Jordan, who produced, and King Miller, who also produced. Wide receiver wise, it's going to look bad out the gate. Initial thought process would be you lose a Mekhi Lemon, who was an absolute stud, and a Jacoby Lane, who was a powerhouse on the outside, making just freak catches all over the field. That's going to look bad out the gate, but I think Tanook Hines negates the loss of Mekhi Lemon. Hines looked very good and looked very much so like Mekhi Lemon in limited opportunities when on the field. He was a direct replacement, did his best impression in the bowl game. So I think he replaces Lemon. The bigger concern for me is who replaces Jacoby Lane and his size on the outside. That likely falls on Zacharias Williams. Maybe Terrell Anderson, who comes over from NC State. I just don't particularly think Terrell Anderson's a good player. So I would expect Anderson to have a role, but not be the guy in this situation. More likely, I think you could see one of the freshmen step up, like an Ethan Feaster, Caden Dixon-Wyatt, Trent Mosley, etc., as they have a propensity in the past to just throw these guys right in the mix. Would not shock me if any of them jumped to the top of the chart right out of the gate. Tight end wise, it's actually a bigger loss than you would think to have Lake McCree now out of the offense. He was a productive, like, he would get you the yards when you needed it. Would not shock me if Mark Bowman steps right in and they just start grooming him to be the top guy in the tight end room. It's a solid room overall. They utilize that tight end more than people think, and it's when you need it most is when they step up big time. So I think we'll see somebody be very productive out of this room, particularly, with Hines being the overall number one option, but the loss of that secondary outside guy, I think you could see some tight end production come from somewhere. We're just going to have to wait and kind of see. Bets could come in on Mark Bowman as an early option there. Offensive line wise, return of Elijah Page is going to help them tremendously. Kid's a stud, an absolute superstar. Bring back both guards, bring back the right tackle, just the center being gone. But I think Killian O'Connor steps right in and they have a very, very good offensive line that is able to run block, and they're able to build around that run game, which is going to just let Maeva sit back there in the ultimate set of comfort. And this offense should be humming immediately out of the gate. Just an absolute smoke show right there. Now, Danton Lynn being gone from defensive coordinator is going to be a pain in the tuchus for these guys because he turned this whole thing around. Can Gary Patterson, he's done it 100 times before, can he do that same thing that Danton Lynn was able to do? That's going to remain to be seen. I think Danton Lynn's probably the top 3 or 4 defensive coordinator in the country, realistically. One of the guys who can just take and turn a defense into a monster right away. He did it with this unit previously. Patterson's going to have to do the same thing. He does have some pieces to play with, though. Defensive line side of the ball, they do lose stuff across the board here, but bring back Cameron Crawford, which is going to help them a ton. Loss of Anthony Lucas and Devin Tompkins will hurt, but Abasiri is a good player. He should slot right in as a guy that does some stuff immediately. Shelby is a very good player. Not a lot of concerns along the defensive line here. I think they're very good. I think Zariah Fisher was an astute pickup for them. Van Summeren, a good pickup as well to keep adding to the depth. They recruit really well along this defensive side of the ball, the defensive line specifically, and some young edges that could, young guys that could see the field early out the gate, like Luke Wafel, and Jamion Winfield. Those guys could contribute rotationally, at least, out of the gate. Linebacker wise, big loss. Eric Gentry, leader of the defense for me at the second level, an absolute stud on the outside. His loss will be felt. Desmond Stevens, though, remains in that Mike spot. I think Jaden Walker will rotate in plenty here. Devin Bryant was a good pickup in the portal. I think that'll help out a good bit. So he might step in and try to replace Gentry. It could be interesting to see what they do with this linebacker core, mainly with Gentry gone. That's a guy that I personally think was a very good playmaker for them. Similarly, on the back end, 2 major losses into Carlos Nicholson and Kamari Ramsey, but they still return some good stuff. You know, you get Bishop Fitzgerald, Christian Pierce back. Those are 2 key aspects to bring back a safety tandem like that, and then still add a bunch of corners, add some high-end guys even. Jontez Williams was a really good add out of the portal. He should step right into a cornerback spot that DeCarlos Nicholson's departing. Elbert Hill, high-end recruit, maybe ends up being a guy that could see the field early on. Overall, I think USC is a very talented team on the offensive side of the football. They're not going to struggle to put up points. $1 million question is how does Gary Patterson and this defense continue to progress it, and can it keep up with the offense that should be able to run the football and keep themselves into longer sustained possessions, giving the defense less time on the field, which would be a knock that previous Lincoln Riley teams would have had before. Moving over to the Washington Huskies and Jed Fish. Big fan of these guys. That's why he's behind me. Y'all know I love me some DeMond Williams. I think the kid's an absolute superstar in the waiting here. He can run with the best of them. He throws the football way better than people think. His completion percentage is unreal. He was working with one good weapon a year ago. I think those guys progressed pretty well. We'll get to the wide receivers here in a minute, but I am a massive DeMond Williams fan. He was one of my sleeper Heisman picks for last season if they could run the table. He's a guy that I think long-term is a very talented player, specifically in college, given his size. I think he's going to lack the capability long-term in the NFL to be able to do much due to that size profile. But his overall athleticism and his ability to just complete passes is underrated. We saw it the first season as a freshman, and then we've kind of when he took over for Will Rogers, and we kind of saw it last year where he just kind of played pretty well overall. Bring in Elijah Brown, that's going to take the place of the Kai Horton departure. Nobody cares that Todd Kai Horton's gone. It's the Demond Williams show. This offense will run as far as Demond Williams takes it. The big surprise, there was a couple big surprises for me. I would say that Washington should and could be one of the better teams in the country, and they just kind of lacked the ability to keep some key pieces to me. Adam Muhammad leaving was a shocker. I felt that he would just go, hey, cool. Jonah Coleman's now out of the offense. He was a Jed Fish guy. And now Muhammad's turn to take over the offense. He was a good power runner, looked good when Coleman wasn't available, when he was banged up for portions of the year. They relied heavily on Adam Muhammad. And this is his turn to take it over. And then Muhammad just bolts. It makes no sense to me. At least they were able to bring in Jaden Lamar from Oregon, and I'm guessing he'll end up slotting in as the starter in this situation, being pushed by Jordan Washington. Maybe it was a situation where they kind of told Muhammad, hey, man, like Washington and Lamar are going to be our guys, and we're not super interested in keeping you around. That seems nuts to me because I would like to have Adam Muhammad on my team. So I don't get that one. I'm concerned somewhat. I think they're going to end up having to put a lot more on Demond Williams' plate by comparison to what they had a year ago, specifically losing your top two rushers and a guy that I think you shouldn't have lost. So that's going to make things interesting. And then it only compounds by the fact that Denzel Boston is a superstar and is now gone. Denzel Boston got banged up a little bit last year. They missed him when he was gone. I do really like Desmond Roebuck. He had a fabulous freshman season. I think he steps into the number one receiver role. They're going to end up relying on the fact that Rashid Williams is going to need to now step up. And he was expected to step up. He just got banged up. He was expected to be a high-end player, a guy that I looked out for as a breakout option in this offense going forward. That's your 1 and 2 in this offense, no doubt for me. I was surprised that Raiden Vines Bright left. They used him more than you would expect for a freshman to be utilized. Similarly, he falls in the bucket of the Adam Muhammad situation where it's shocking that Raiden Vines Bright left because he would have been one of the top 3 in this offense. Audric Harris, they used as a speed deep threat. They let him go. That was somewhat of a surprise for me as well. I would have felt that they would have wanted to keep that core around them now that Boston Evans, I do not care. I thought Amari Evans is an absolute trash player, and he ended up producing a trash line. So now they ended up having to go out and get Christian Moss from Kennesaw State. Solid player. Don't get me wrong. Solid player. He is not Raiden Vines Bright or Audric Harris. So they are losing stuff. They need to get their NIL together and figure this thing out, because I don't think it's a recruiting talent issue, and I don't think it's these guys want to leave issue, don't like the system, don't like Jed Fish, yada, yada, yada. They have a star quarterback who threatened to leave. They lost what should have been their starting running back. They lost what would have been a top 3 wide receiver. They lost what would have been a top 4 wide receiver for them. So their NIL, I think, has issues. I don't know anything specifically to that, but I think their NIL has issues that they need money. I think Washington needs to do a better job of bringing in the money around there. Decker DeGraff, great piece to keep. Very talented tight end, a guy that I think continues to grow and build upon what he did a year ago. I think he sees more passes now with Denzel Boston gone, and with them likely to have to rely a little bit more on the pass game than they did on the run game a year ago. So there's going to be a guy that they're going to rely on in DeGraff as their tight end 1 and probably the wide receiver 2/3 in this offense. Offensive line wise, lose a little bit here. I don't like the loss of Carver Willis. I thought he was a pretty decent player. He was a guy that I thought they were relying on pretty heavily going into last year. He produced. He produced at a high level. Bringing back Mills, Hatchett, and as a party are very much so going to help them with that continuity. So I like the way this offensive line is built up. Do lose the other Hatchet, but I do think it's a solid offensive line, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think Dietrich is likely to have a role here. I think Green, even as a freshman, could be an interesting guy to see what they do with him early on in his career as well. Defensively, love the Ryan Walters hire. Ryan Walters, talented defensive coach. What can he do with this defense? We'll see. Because I don't like what they lost. They did lose a good bit. I like Bryce Butler. I liked Uiagalelei. Bringing back Davis and Thompson is going to help them. They're more of they're not necessarily pass rushers. They're more of hold up, get against the run type guys. This defense got banged up horribly last year, and it hurt them big time. So they needed to go out and add some other big bodies. Conley and Watts were good additions, and in as big bodies towards the middle. They'll help out Davis and Thompson on this front. They're going to end up needing some of these other guys though to step up and build around that rotation, given everything that they lost off of this team, off of this front seven. Linebacker wise, Al-Yukta and Ziri Alexander, good linebackers. They're going to be fine there. They got banged up. Durfee was a big loss when he got banged up during the season. He was in and out of the lineup. I think his loss is going to end up hurting a fair amount there. Devin Bryant just deuced and went away. That's what I'm saying. Like when you talk about it, I think they did a poor job with the NIL. Bryant's not a guy you should let go from a linebacker core. Now, I know he's ranked down here in this room. That's your starting middle linebacker next year, Jacob Manu. And I correctly predicted it before the season started last year when, if you go back and watch my Washington team preview before the season started, Jacob Manu was not going to play last year. He will be the team captain and the man leading this team in the middle as the number one linebacker for this Jedfish team, because he formerly played for Jedfish at Arizona. He was a star middle linebacker there, and he had a knee issue in that last season at Arizona. He sat out last year, basically took a medical, and now he's going to come back. He played the minimum last year just to get his feet back wet and get some play in. Now he's going to be the number one linebacker in this system for me. I like that. I do think that him in concert with these other guys that got some good playing time last year will end up being able to produce in this second level. Secondary wise, they do a very good job of bringing in size on the outside. Takario Davis played fine. 6'4" corners though, man. Prysock and Davis, both 6'4" on the outside. They love size. So Dylan Robinson is a guy that they're going to want to produce on that as well as a 6'3" corner. Emmanuel Carnley was a good pickup for them to play on the outside as well. I do think that they have some decent safety play returning with McLaughlin at strong safety. They'll miss Esteen a little, but Rayshawn Clark and Ryland Dillard Allen are going to be able to step in pretty well. Overall, for Washington, I think they had a very good team put around DeMond Williams. They got scared when DeMond Williams almost left, factually, reasonably so, because they had nothing behind him to be able to assume that mantle. They did lose some good pieces, some of them due to graduation, some of them because they didn't pony up in the transfer portal to pay him enough. And I think ultimately that's going to keep them from ascending into that next level and keep them from being a title contender. So I'm not as high on DeMond Williams in this team as I was a year ago entering the season, partly because some of the key pieces that I wanted to be able to rely upon, they weren't able to keep and pay. And I think that's a long-term issue that they're going to have to deal with. All right, moving on to Wisconsin. I'm going to try to find nice things to say here. I just struggle with it because I don't think Luke Fickell's particularly great. I think Jeff Grimes is absolutely the Cam Fancher of offensive coordinators in college football. I think he stinks. Just an absolutely abhorrent hire. He's a great offensive line coach, and past that, I don't think he should ever have an offensive coordinator job going forward. That's just my personal opinion. I just don't think he's very good. Yeah, no offense. I saw him enough at LSU to know. Good offensive line coach, bad at everything else. He's the Norv Turner of offensive coordinators, except for he should be an offensive line coach, not a head coach, or not a like Norv Turner couldn't be an offensive coordinator or could be a great offensive coordinator, terrible as a head coach, but one of the best offensive minds of all time. Jeff Grimes, great offensive line coach, absolutely terrible offensive coordinator. And we'll see that once again because this offense probably ends up sucking wind for the third, fourth straight year at this point. Quarterback position, they continue playing hot potato with them. They hoped Danny O'Neal would end up being the guy, but he was overwhelmed when he was at San Diego State. So shockingly, he was overwhelmed at Wisconsin. Go figure. Who would have seen that coming when he was overwhelmed at San Diego State as a freshman? That as a sophomore, he'd be overwhelmed when forced into duty because who would have guessed that Billy Edwards would get hurt? It's not like he wasn't hurt every single year at Maryland. He shows flashes and then gets hurt. It happened again. Hunter Simmons, what a wonderful run. 2 touchdowns, 7 picks. Shocker. They didn't address the position well. Now, do I think Colton Joseph can be a fun player for them? Yes. I don't think Danny O'Neal's the starter. I don't think there's any world they could even consider that. I think Deuce Adams was a smart, longer-term pickup potentially. Maybe he's groomed into being something. Unlikely. He's probably more likely a backup that never goes pro in something other than sports. But Colton Joseph, if we forget, Old Dominion played Indiana to start the season last year. Colton Joseph had a 75-yard touchdown run to open the season against that Indiana team. He's talented. He's a good quarterback. He ran for 1,000 yards at Old Dominion. Didn't do much against James Madison. More of a run / chuck it up and pray type quarterback. I don't know that his game really translates to the Big Ten, but at least he's mobile. So that gives you some more ability. He's a better passer than Danny O'Neal. So he's got that going for him. He can run better than anybody else that's on the depth chart. So he's the best of a bunch of bad options, more than likely. He's probably an upgrade on what you would have thought Billy Edwards would be because he's more mobile and probably an equally skilled passer, just hasn't played this level of competition over the course of the years. Running back wise, it was a beautiful room going into last season that ended up doing jack squat. Darian Dupree, still very talented. I'm not off the Darian Dupree train yet. I still think Dylan Jones is a very talented player. If you watch the LSU breakdown, I think Dylan Jones could be their number one. And I think Wisconsin fans, you will be largely, man, you'll be so upset if Dylan Jones just realizes what we think of him when he's at LSU in that offense and he performs more like Quinshon Judkins at Ole Miss than what he's been doing at under this pitiful offense. Ituka, maybe he does some stuff. He looked okay last year. I don't think that ends up being the solution. Me personally, I would buy probably Dupree should be the guy in the backfield. I am in no way an Abu Sama fan. So I understand the pickup, and he's a solid depth piece. But fact of the matter is at Iowa State, since he had the snow game against Kansas State, where he ran for like 273 in that one, I've been largely disappointed. I didn't think he looked very good the last 2 years, basically. I thought he looked soft, slow, not able to make people miss. I don't think his game translates whatsoever to the Big Ten. I think Nate Palmer is a fine addition. He's just more depth. He's more Yakimelli than anything else. Brian Jackson, if anything, I would say Brian Jackson is better than those two. He should vault up into the Dupree Ituka sweepstakes for the top spot. I think Jackson's the most talented of that trio they've brought in. I don't like Sama. He'll probably get run. It's wasted carries, in my opinion. Wide receiver wise, they didn't have anybody to be able to get them the ball, but Kekahuna was a guy that we thought might be able to do something. He ultimately did nothing before he departs for North Carolina. Vinny Anthony is likely to be the top option in the offense. He looked good a year ago for what that he was dealing with, no doubt about it. Don't lose much. Dekel Crowdis, maybe. He's just a shot guy. He's a wind sprinter. I don't think you're gonna see anything there. He probably is out of eligibility given the Jaden Ballard's out of eligibility, so probably just forgot to mark him out there. Shamar Rigby, fine. I mean, maybe he does something. Not that big a fan. He's likely to be on the field. Vinny Anthony's your one. Chris Brooks probably sees some playing time. Domingo is the question mark from Southeastern, right down the road from me. Passing offensive team there. Caught the ball well, played well, translate up 2 levels basically, maybe. I don't know that I would be able to buy into that. I didn't think Zion Kearney was particularly good at Oklahoma. This is just one of those classic Big Ten teams that lacks weaponry on the outside. So it's going to come down to how good the running back room is. Don't love it. How good the quarterback can run. Well, at least you got that going for you because he dang sure doesn't have anybody to throw the football to. Don't love it. Lance Mason, though, talented. I like Lance Mason. I think Lance Mason's a very talented player coming out of Missouri State. He might end up being the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. Would not shock me whatsoever if he ends up being the number 1 here. Jacob Harris, also talented. I would not be shocked if they run 2 tight end sets to get Jacob Harris and Lance Mason on the field at the same time. Offensive line wise, this is where you understand where you are in the pecking order of this conference. When you're losing guys that played for you to Illinois and to Indiana, you're behind them. You're not as good as them. And now you used to rely under Brett Bielema on a great offense. Now Bielema's taking your linemen from you and saying, well, good luck. I'll see you later. So they got problems. I think the right side's okay. Left side up to the middle has got problems. They're going to need Kawecki to come straight in and play. PJ Wilkins going to need to come in. Blake Cherry come in. They're going to have to hope some of these guys hit. I don't like the offense of Wisconsin whatsoever. The schedule's better, but I think the offense they lack a lot. Outside of tight end, there's a lot of question marks for me for this offense to be able to play. Namely, that their offensive coordinator is just trash, and I think they're going to be bad overall in that situation. JVR Suggs, that is a good returning piece of production there. I think he's a solid enough player to be able to play a good 5 tech for them. Otherwise, Barton, Lane, Peterson, whatever. They were all terrible. They got no pass rush. They had a terrible season a year ago. That's why they hit the portal so hard. But Poyser, decent player out of Buffalo. Actually do like him a good bit. I think his game will translate pretty well. He holds up well against the run. He's able to kind of get a good inside rush in there. I think Cooper's a solid player out of App State. Nothing crazy, but there was some high floor, low upside is what they went and kind of got out of the portal just to be able to pair up with these guys. I think they're going to play fine, but they're not amazing players. Nobody's going to blow your socks off. They're not rushing the passer. Once again, though, where you fall in the pecking order, sir. Ohio State says, I want Allegro. We're going to take Allegro. So now Rieger, Allegro, and Peterson all gone. There goes your pass rush. Congratulations. Post is going to be a good player for y'all. Now, can you hold on to him? We'll have to wait and see. But I think Post is going to step in and be one hell of a good player. He's probably the best player on this defense, more than likely heading into next season, and he's going to have to play like it. John Kamara was a solid enough pickup out of Kansas. Catalano, good player to build around as well. Some of these young guys got stuff. You would expect that the Catalano Posa Cheeks combination ends up growing from what they did a year ago and ends up being pretty solid. Secondary wise, also again, problems. Zachman, Indiana. West Virginia came and got a guy. Virginia comes and gets a freshman corner. And you're left with Young and Hill as the remaining pieces in this offense or on this defensive secondary. Ricardo Hallman, I think, is a loss. I know he didn't play amazing, but he's still a solid player, a guy that was highly touted at different points. I did think they did a good job going and get some depth pieces from some better teams. Marvin Burks is going to be a solid playmaker in the safety position. Pairing him up with Young, Bryce West probably comes in and is going to need to step into a cornerback role with Deani Hill. Arizona State pickup out of Javen Robinson. That's not bad. I like that as well to give some high-end corner depth and then some more depth pieces here. Overall, really, we're just playing a game of how long they decide to wait until they pay the buyout from Luke Fickell. They should have just bit the bullet, got Jason Eck out of New Mexico, and had this thing rolling in 2 or 3 years. Right now, you're just delaying the inevitable. And you're going to end up paying that buyout eventually, or else the money pool is just going to dry up and they're going to decide your support's going to keep trending in the wrong direction for what should be a top tier program in the Big Ten.